Sitaram, once again we thank you for joining us on Sankhya TV for weekly Thursday program SWA DHARMA, where efforts are made spiritually to propagate the individual to reach that stage in life where he or she becomes a source of inspiration to point the way to upright living. Coming to you exclusively on Sankhya TV. Today's program is a continuation of our last program, which is the 5 Yagyas everyone should perform in their lifetime. So last week, quickly, we dealt with Dev Yagya and Rishi Yagya. So now we come to the other 3 Yagyas. And remember, we pointed out that the concept of Yagya being Havan, Singhasan, and Vedi Puja and so forth, yes, that is Yagya, but it entails only the first 2. Now we come to Shraddha. Shraddha is a Yagya. Ancestral worship is a Yagya. And we'll get into the graphic details as far as time will allow to show the relevance, the importance of Shraddha. We always wonder why sometimes in some homes there is hesitance to perform Shraddha. There's an association between Shraddha and impurity. There's a feeling or an interpretation of Shraddha as something for the dead and so irretrievable. So we just want to change the paradigm a bit according to Shastric law. And whenever we say Shastric law, we are talking about authoritative books in Sanatana Dharma. Books like Prit Manjari, books like Dharma Sindhu, books like Nirnay Sindhu. So these are where the quotations come from. And it's not just mentioning the books. Sometimes, as you see, we dabble in the books and we put in a quote here and there. Coming to Shraddha. So we are familiar with this. It's the mold which represents the deceased person. Again, time for performance of Shraddha on a new moon day. If the person, God forbid, has passed on, then Shraddha will be performed on 2 days. On the Dasgatra, which is the 10th day after cremation, day of cremation being day 1. So on the 10th day, we access a Mahapatra, and by the river and so forth, we perform Shraddha, where 10 pindas are offered. We'll develop more on the pindas in a little while. Then comes if it's a Brahman who has passed on, then on the 12th day, day 1 of creation, day 1 of cremation being day 1 being the day of cremation, and we go down. So 10 days Dasgat, 12 days is the Shraddha ceremony, what we say Bhandara. If it's a Chatri, 13 days. If it's a Vaish, 16 days. And if it's a Shudra, 24 days. We keep stressing the day 1 being the day of cremation, not the day of death. So apart from new moon, these are 2 mandatory shrouds which are done, but they are dependent on when the person exits. We are pointing here now, especially to the one that falls in the category of Yagya. That's the one apart from death now, we wish to make offerings to the ancestors. And Garu Puran clearly states that a single sesame seed, a single black till seed can take care of so much wages of papa, wages of sins committed knowingly or unknowingly by those who have passed on. Much more so when we get detailed with offerings. If we really care for those who have gone by, who have fostered us and taken care of us, if we really want to chart a nice future for them, Shraddha is the way. That is why it's a Yagya. And in this form, how does that person who has passed on manifest themselves? They manifest themselves at the point of Shraddha, where the Sankalp is done, not in a visible form, in a form that is known as Suksham Sharir. The Suksham Sharir carries 17 faculties. It carries the essence of the 5 elements. It carries the 5 airs, A-I-R-S. It carries the 5 Gyanendriyas, the 5 senses of perception. It carries the element of the mind and it carries the knowledge-based buddhi. And these are the 17 faculties that make up the Suksham Sharir that presents itself, as we say, not in a visible form, at the point of Shraddh. So our ancestor has come in that form. Why we have called them? To make 16 Pinda offerings. Notice the head is facing east, is on the eastern side. The performer of Shraddh will be facing south, and the Purohit, the one who's conducting the ceremony, faces north. And the body, the head, and 15 sections they are divided into. The Pinda, it's that bowl of ground rice mixed with milk, honey, ghee, and black till. It is recommended that it be offered when it's warm. And that is the key offering in a Shraddh, the offering of the Pindas, because the mantras, the accompanying mantras will tell us that I make the offering, if it's the head, so that my ancestor would come back in their next life based on the laws of reincarnation with a fully functional head and all the organs of perception that accompany the head, the brain, and all other parts of the head. We want it fully functional, O Prabhu, by this offering. The mantra expresses that desire of the offerer. And we go right down till the 10th offering, which covers all the body, the entire body, the nervous system, the connective tissue, the transport system, all limbs. All these come down in turn, and they are offered for those benefits. What happens between 10 and 16? The 10th, the 16th offering is for the devatas. The 11th offering is for Brahma, the creator. The 12th offering for Vishnu, the sustainer. The 13th offering for Shiv Baba. The 14th offering for Surjanarayan Swami. The 15th offering for Yamraj in his capacity as the god of death. And the 16th offering, the very Aryama we spoke about when we were talking about Tithi worship on a new moon. And interestingly enough, when the 11 to 15 Pindas are offered, they are offered in the conventional manner to devatas. But when we reach Aryama, the offering goes this way, as we have offered the first 10 offerings, because Aryama Devata is the messenger between the Pitras and us who do the offerings. So essentially, the 16 Pindas, in a broad way, tell us why they are offered and how they are offered. Females can perform the rites. There are homes that doesn't have a male offspring and doesn't have a close one, a nephew or so, that can do the offerings. In pecking order, the females, if it comes to it, the females can perform Shraddh. There is no ambiguity. That's the declaration of Dharma Sindhu. And understandably so. Religion was never made to make anyone uncomfortable. If you were to say, well, females are forbidden, it's almost a sexist statement, and Sanatana Dharma doesn't cater for those things. So there is a pecking order. And the reason why there's a pecking order, because in the dynasty, the males will carry the gotra and so forth. But in the absence of that, the females can certainly fit the mold. And Shraddh must finish before noon. At noontime, on a new moon day, when the sun is at its highest point, the ancestors, or the Suksham Sharir, exits earth. So Shraddh has to be concluded before noon. And the ideal time apart from new moon is Pitri Paksh. Pitri Paksh, which is a good time. It's an ideal time to perform this yagya. We all have people who have gone before us, grandparents, parents, etc. And here we get a chance to redress whatever little shortcomings they may have made. We too will make ours. At least we have the presence of mind to offer on their behalf. So through the laws of karma, whatever inconveniences they may have to undergo in their reincarnated form, the performance of Shraddh will iron out those hurdles that they may face. Other points of note in Shraddh is that sometimes, and this one usually happens when someone has passed on, or there is inclination, an indication rather, that someone is at the final turn in life. And then it's recommended in Garud Purana that one perform a Gaudan, and that is connected with that Vaitrini river, Nadi, which we have to cross, and a lot of history behind that. But the point we want to zoom in on is that it's a Gaudan. It's not a Bachuadan. So it's not good, it's not in good taste to take a calf, nursing from the mother, and offer that in Dan. It's a cow Dan that has to be, just a little point we wanted to make there. That has to be developed further. But interestingly enough, we asked the question, let's be rational. If my father has passed on and he has reincarnated after 1 year, because that's the point in time when reincarnation occurs, then when I make my offering, he's already in another form. How will he receive? He's not like in the year shortly right after death where he is in Pitralok and he can probably revisit us in Suksham Sharid. Well, then we come to these 3 states of consciousness. There are 3 states of consciousness that exist in everyone. You have Jagran, when we are awake. We have Swapna, which is a dream state. So let's tarry a while. So when we're in dream state, we can get up the next morning and recount every fine detail of the dream. So that's dream state. And then we have Sushupti, deep sleep. That's the one. When we get up in the morning, we have sketches of an image. We were climbing a mountain. We were swimming across a big lake, a big river. And just snatches of that experience comes to us. But there's no clarity at all. That is Sushupti. Those who read in the Western world, Lobsang Rampa, the Tibetan writer, had a good idea of that when he wrote. That is when, in this very form that we are in deep sleep, in Sushupti Avastha, that part of the body, Suksham Sharid, leaves and goes and travels. And this is the point in time when we make our Shraddha offering. If even at that point in time, wherever, if it's my father has incarnated, he's awake, Aryama Devata comes in there. He keeps that offering until the fall of night or the fall of sleep, when Sushupti prevails and that reincarnated form emanates from the body that they have reincarnated from and receives the offering of our offerings via Aryama Devata. So we just wanted to rationalize when we say ancestral worship. We get down to the finest detail to give some clarity that this should not be relegated to a position of impurity. It's really a gratitude shown to those who have looked after us and brought us to where we are in life. So Yagya number 4, Bhut Yagya. This one does not involve any puja per se. Bhut being God's creation, looking after God's creation. Examples, looking after the cow. And a good technique for those who have Yagyas, when we spoke about Dev and Rishi Yagya, before feeding anyone in that Yagya, because most times meals are prepared, it is good to have someone dispatch off the first of that food to a cow. That bestows enormous blessings to all those who partake of that Yagya food. But looking after cows separately, or looking after the fostering of cows, we might not have the facilities, the time, the skill to look after a cow, but if we can contribute in any way to those who tend to cows, that is indeed a great blessing that goes with that, and that's a Yagya. By being instrumental in taking care of God's creation as listed here, the classic ones we're talking about. What about the birds? Feeding the birds, it's always beneficial, but more so, there is a Graha Shanti. If one were to wear sardonyx, color we're talking about, and feed grains to birds, that appeases Rahu. Now, interestingly enough, There's a lot of history behind this. And this history was designed by Bhrigu. Bhrigu was yet another son of Lord Brahma, the creator. And Bhrigu decided for the world who, where there are not people who follow the tenets of Sanatana Dharma, people of different religion and persuasions, Bhrigu, because Sanatana Dharma is international and universal, Bhrigu designed this simple method where you don't have to change a prayer structure and change your God of your liking and understanding. All you have to do, all the individual has to do is attend to God's creation, which is the possession of Hindus, Muslims, Christians, all. So we are not asking, Bhrigu didn't ask anyone to change their religion or their persuasion. All he's saying, take care of God's creation. And a long history in each of these shows how by this deft move, it appeases the Graha Rahu. Graha Rahu will translate us to the Western world, wavelengths that come from one of the celestials' body, and wavelengths that are not really beneficial depending on what position that planet might occupy. It's sometimes comparable to X-rays and other rays that are sometimes not beneficial. X-rays will help us to read and diagnose what is wrong with a person. Too much X-ray exposure is also dangerous. So it's along that line of thought we are talking about Rahu's negative input in everyone. And so by feeding the green city birds, that takes care of Rahu. Wearing light brown and feeding green city fishes, the fishes of the sea, of the river, that appeases Ketu for the same trend of thought. And even taking care of domesticated animals, dogs and kittens and so forth, looking after them, that is a Yagya, taking care of God's creation. And that in itself is a very, it's within our easy reach to do. And it also teaches us that we are not here in an isolated spot. We are here as part of a whole, and we have to make our contributions. So Bhrigu was the master craftsman of how one goes about looking after God's creation. Bhrigu, how much can be said about Bhrigu? Bhrigu at one point in time went in tapasya, and this itihas goes to show the mettle of Bhrigu. And when he awoke, he missed his son Shukracharya, the very Shukracharya of the Grahas. So by now we're formulating the link. And he called to order, Bhrigu called to order God of death, Yamraj, and Yamraj came before him, fearing the spiritual power of this sage. He came before him, and Bhrigu asked about an account about his son Shukracharya, and Yamraj said, well, he passed on reborn. Bhrigu says, next time I go into Dhyan, let there be none of that. Let my son remain alive permanently. And so said, so done. So Bhrigu, bottom line, called the god of death to order. So, and look who he did for. His son Shukracharya, who as far as the grahas concerned are equally even more potent, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. So it is in this vein Bhrigu was authorized to make these prescriptions for those within Sanatana Dharma and those out of Sanatana Dharma, because of the expanse of his experience, because of his spiritual development and spiritual prowess. We come now to the final of the 5 Yagyas, which as human beings we should get involved before exiting this earth. And that is Atithi Satkar. According Satkar being hospitality, to Atithi is a deserving visitor. And who is a deserving visitor? We go to the book of definitions, Ramayana, Kishkindha Kand, and we watch. Lakshman dekahu moragana nachata varir pekhi grihi vidati rata harashavita Vishnu bhakta kah dekhi. Again, Pravarshan Katha. Shri Ramchandra is talking to Lakshman. This is at the point in time in the abduction of Sita Mata. He sat perched on Pravarshan Parvat. The very word Pravarshan means that mountain, Parvat mountain, Pravarshan, where there's copious rainfall. So the Lord had to tarry a while, had to stall his quest to seek out Sita Devi, his spouse, and he sat there being hampered greatly by the weather, torrential rainfall with Lakshman. And so he took the time off to teach the world. And one wonders if the Lord didn't find himself in perversion, but to take time off in his mission to teach to his children of the world. And what did he tell Lakshman? Lakshmana dekahu moragana. He says, Lakshman, look, as we look down into the valley, moragana, we see flocks and hosts of peacocks. Nachata varita pekhi. And they are dancing, happily dancing, because pekhi, they have a gaze of the great clouds, the heavy clouds that are coming close by, because the clouds, great clouds, will cleave close to earth and bring rainfall. And what does that do to the peacock? Well, all those little creepy crawlies, when the rain falls, will come out of their holes and burrows, and that's the diet of the peacock. So they will be sustained by the advent of rain. That is peacocks. It didn't say man has to feed on worms and so forth. Animals, creation. The Lord says, in a similar manner, Grihi virati dataharashauta. So too, Grihi, a grihast, a householder, should become exceedingly happy and joyous when, and that could only happen if he has virati. If he or she, that householder, we all have to look after house and look after car and look after yard and manicure the lawn. Those are necessities. Those are approved. But we have to have a distance of with the attachment we have to these things. And if that happens, if we know a cutoff point, then such a person, such a householder will have an opportunity that comes the way of many, but appreciated by a few. And that is Vishnu Bhakt Kah Dekhi. When a devotee of God comes at one's doorway, then one, like the peacock, says Shri Ramchandra, will become happy, because this devotee of God is not going to bring food, but he'll bring a more important food, spiritual food. When we engage him in conversation, that pious visitor of God that comes at our doorway, when we engage him in conversation, then there is a lot to benefit from. That man of God, he provides support for our safety. We have quoted this line of Rama in Ma Bhirakshai. There are others. We are embarking on a journey. Pravishi Nagar Ki Jai Sabakaja, Hriday Rakhi Koshal Puraraja. I believe in previous Satsangan programs we have done that. There is also Daras Pras Majan Urpana, Hare Pap Ka Ved Purana. The wise have said, by keeping company with the holy people, by their mere sight, by the touch of their feet, and more so immersed in conversation, being a good listener, an ardent listener, and listening to their conversations, their input, it does so much to fortify us, even in health concerns. Medicine has its place in Sanatana Dharma, no question about it. In fact, in the 24 stool avatar of God, 23 have gone, 1 to come, Kalki avatar to come. The 12th of those 24 incarnations, God came as the Lord of medicine, Dhanvantari. And he's acknowledged roughly 2 days before Diwali. When we get closer to Diwali, we'll tell you which day exactly. But he is the Lord of medicine. If you want, for want of a better expression, he's a consultant among physicians in God's structure. So the holy man will tell us, well, before we reach the consultant, we have to go to the GP. And the conversation with the holy man structures that way for us. We all know in seeking our health, we have to do our bit, manage ourselves good. If you're hypertensive, cut the salt. Diabetic, reduce the sugar, etc., etc. So those are just common sense approaches. But equally, if we marry that with the divinity, that when it comes to other physical concerns, we go to the blessings of Shiv Baba, we go to Durga Mata in the form of Rohini, we go to the physicians of the god, the Ashwini Kumaras. In the younger stage, we go to the Shashti Devi, and of course, we go to Dhanvantari Bhagwan. And then there are little accompanying mantras and easy maneuvers which we put into place that will ensure that that which we have to do medically, and we have done as best as we can, and still probably not bringing down our condition to a satisfactory level. Possibly it needs a better mental approach, and that is where the holy person, by imparting to us these manifestations of God and their history, their relevant history as far as health is concerned, we might find ourselves in a fortified position to handle the challenges of health. This visitor, who is a pious person, a satsangi person, a visitor of God, even helps us to understand this body, because the connect between this body and the divine calls for Gyan or spiritual wisdom. And the holy person is conversant with Manas Charitra and other texts of noble reference. In the case of Ramayana, Kshiti Jalapavaka Gagana Samira Panchara Chitayah Adham Sharira. We have to reach the point in time when we understand and appreciate that this body is made up of the 5 elements, air, water, ether, well, we say fire, but as is temperature and space, and it is much beyond that. When we pass on in life, at whatever point in time, that is what remains, the 5 elements. But kindling inside is that divine spark, and the recitation of that line, if we are privy to the satsang of a holy person, will bring us, will help, will aid and abet in bringing us to doorways of satsang, where that point is developed more and we can understand the connect between this and the Supreme. Once again, we thank you for joining us on Sankhya TV. SWA DHARMA, carried exclusively on Sankhya TV, and we wish you a safe and protected week ahead. Sitaram.